I don't think the measuring of how many friends came to play. It was more on,
Was your joke funny?
yeah, like, am I cool to hang out with and just talk with? And that always used to play on my mind. This friend, or can I be this guy's friend? Or
Mm,
can I even am I worthy enough to be?
yeah, I have those thoughts. I had it more back then as to now. Sometimes it does happen.
Hello, I'm Sam.
And I'm Amelia.
Welcome back to Us Adura podcast where we aim to build a better mindset for better relationships.
Yeah, this week on Mindset, we are talking about self value and how to see value in ourselves. And how this came about was actually a personal reflection, personal thought that I had with recent times in my career. And I was just thinking throughout my design journey, I've been in it 7 to 8 years now. And for the most part, most of the places have always complimented me and how well I can communicate, how well I work with team members, how well just so organized and just do my job. But there was another place that was completely opposite, gave me feedback that was like, you can't communicate properly, you just like technically saying I can't do my job, but I'm not good at my job. And I was just thinking, because of that one comment from one place, it did actually hit me in terms of now self-doubting my capabilities in my job. And I was just thinking, why does my confidence lean so much on the words of others when I've already been in this space for so long? So obviously I'm not useless or I'm not bad at my job. Like, I actually, if I truly sit back and without sounding arrogant, I actually know and feel that I am in a space where I know what I'm doing and I am capable of the stuff that I'm doing at my job. So even though I know that, but one person out of the 10, like for example, saying that I can't do my job, why does that hinder my confidence so much? So this is how the topic started.
Yeah, a very deep and meaningful conversation. Something that I actually went through in my previous job that I don't think I actually really talked about too much. But when you're bringing up the aspect of your previous role, it did resonate with how I felt at the time as well. And I did have conversations with many people who were my superiors that I did not agree with. So yes, it does have a big impact in terms of your confidence, especially when you've been in that space for so long.
Yeah, and it just made me question, it's like, have I been doing stuff wrong this whole time? Like, why am I suddenly so incompetent after being through so many other jobs? I've said that I'm good at all these things that this other place is saying that I'm not good at. So it just questioned me. And then it's like, how much do you read into this? And it comes back to reading into constructive criticism and feedback and all that, which we'll all touch on today as well.
So a question for you then, after you've mentioned all that, what does value mean to you specifically?
To value yourself.
Yeah.
It's a hard question to answer.
It is a very, very hard question to answer. Yeah.
What does it mean to value yourself? I think valuing yourself is actually knowing your own capabilities without thinking that you're better than someone else, but just knowing where you are and your capabilities. Whether you keep that to yourself or you share it to others, it doesn't matter, but you don't compare it to others. And then when something doesn't align with you and how you see your value, you know how to speak up about it, because when you don't speak about it, like when you don't speak up about it, then I think you don't value yourself and your capabilities.
Now, when I think of this, I think, well, value is what you hold against yourself in terms of your values and your beliefs and hold true to yourself. So if things that you see doesn't align with you, then you get the fuck out or you just disagree, you move away from that. That's why I'm really big on resonating with things that I hold true to myself.
And I think you do it pretty well because you're not afraid. Like, you don't cloud your judgment with diminishing your self value when you see something. Like, for example, in Korea, I can see you say you're interviewing and you're getting a few different jobs that are on the line and they will give you an offer. You're not afraid to put out your value. You know how like a lot of people are afraid to either ask for a pay rise or they ask for something that's actually worth in the market value of their salary. You're not afraid to do that. You're like, yep, I'm looking for this price. Whereas like when you come to me and you tell me that, I'm like, are you serious? That's like way too much. And you're like, no, that's actually what I think I'm worth. So I think you do that really well.
I do this well because I'm quite confident in myself in terms of myself, like in terms of when it comes to career, right? I've done it just like you for X amount of years. So knowing my worth in relation to my value, it is important that you chase that. It's also very important that you represent that. And it's not on the fact of trying to be cocky or try to be arrogant. It's really just being honest with yourself.
Yeah. And this also shines through as well because obviously in a freelancing world, you set your own price. Even any businesses, like say, for example, two different cake shops. One can sell their cakes for $10 for a piece. One can sell for $3.50 for a piece. And yeah, there could be different business models on how they do it, but it's also if we're coming to self-value sense, like one person who has exactly the same cake sees their work and sees the value in their work and the effort that they put into it and values it at $10. And another person might be a bit more humble. Not saying the other person's not humble, but just a bit more generous in their thing and just wanted to give it at 350. So it's like the value that you sell yourself, but it's also that in a sense of how you see yourself as well.
Yeah.
I hope that wasn't too confusing, but that's what I'm trying to see it as in terms of money sense, but in your own value.
Yeah. And I think it's very important that you follow and you align yourself to that.
Yeah, and what you're okay with too, because the person who's selling the cake at 350, they may be okay with that because of all these other factors, and that's fine. But if you're doing it and selling it just at 350 because you think that your cakes aren't as worthy as a $10 cake, then that's a different story. That's more like a mindset and confidence thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We mentioned self value, but also self worth.
Yeah, I
What
think there's a difference.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the difference? Because I personally get this confused.
I think there's similarities and there's differences. So we talked about one episode where it's like letting go versus moving on. I think this is quite a similar concept where to me self-value is like the bigger picture in terms of your behaviors and what you choose to do to align your life and the actions that you do to align it with your self-value, whereas self-worth is like a smaller aspect. I could be right, I could be wrong. So let us know if you have different opinions because we would love to dig deeper on this as well. But self-worth is more like how you let others treat you, like respect how they talk to you. Whereas value is a bigger aspect of that, like the whole.
Holistic perspective of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that what you think?
At first, before really thinking deeper, I got it confused in terms of value and worth. But when I really thought about it, I go, well, yeah, it is very true in terms of knowing what your self worth is, knowing how to be treated in a respect of, as you mentioned, respect. And the value perspective is more on a holistic perspective. Like you have like a self value that you hold yourself against. And for me, I gravitate towards things that I know aligns to that value. And that value can be many things, like your beliefs can be fucking,
Just
yeah,
actions. Any actions that you
any, yeah.
take, your decisions that you make, all of that has an effect. Because of the reason why we started this topic and how words really affected us, why should we value ourselves more?
Having better self value, aligning yourself to that means for me, it's very much my choices that I make in life is more suited to what I believe and what I hold myself against.
Mm, yeah, but even going back to that job sense. So if you didn't value yourself or you didn't really think too much about your self value, for example, you might settle for less. So you might actually be okay with a lower paying job because you think that that's or you're capable of. Whereas if you actually truly see your self value and know that you can put in the work, you can do more, you have a better value where the job should be able to compensate you for your hard work, then you would put yourself into like the higher bracket, like higher salary bracket. So that really helps in like that's what can impact in terms of what you decide on, because you might decide one person might decide on the lower salary because they think that that's all they can get. One might be like, "No, I feel like I can get more,"
Yeah.
and push for it.
Yeah. And just to think of it outside of careers perspective, it also impacts you emotionally as well. And what I mean by that is if you're following or if you're making a decision that is more aligned to your self value, then at least you're content, well not content, but you're happy knowing that this decision is aligned to you, as opposed to what you mentioned before was, oh, I'm just going to settle for something a little bit less. You may not be happy with that decision.
Yeah, because you don't know if you can get something more than that,
Yeah,
and you're just
and
constantly living in that like, "Oh, I don't know what's gonna
yeah,
happen."
it's a bit half-half in terms of your decision. So you're a bit foot in, foot out that door type of situation. Adding to that though, it's also that decision that you make is challenging yourself. It's helping you grow as a person, as an individual as well. So I see it from that perspective that it has that positive impact.
Mm. And then really going back to that initial example again where we both were affected by words of what others have said about our work and how we perform at work and how that hindered our self confidence, or because this one person said it out of the 10 people who have given us good feedback. So I think seeing self value, it's not the arrogant side, but it's like if one person is giving you that bad feedback, which you kind of know is not true. Obviously, if there's something that you need to work on and they're actually giving it to you as constructive criticism, that's a different story. But the one out of the 10 person who's giving you a completely different feedback where you're like, hang on, this doesn't sound right. When you have better self value, this shouldn't affect you, because then to me, that's external validation, which we'll touch on a bit later on as well. But if you truly have confidence in your own work and you're like, nope, this is not how I see it. Like, I appreciate your feedback, but I know that I'm worthy or I am capable of doing all this, this, and this, then that one comment wouldn't affect you. And that's kind of the same I see it as like people who are on YouTube or content creators, people who keep pushing on even though they may have all these hate comments, but then there's all these other people who are praising them and saying like, I love your content. It's sort of the same situation. Like if they have self-value and they know that the content is great and the audience that they have is there to enjoy the content that they make, then the 10% that says something different, it shouldn't affect them at all.
Yeah, your point is actually quite important because we've got to realize that we got to stop conforming to others, stop following the sheeps. You know, we got to stop following other people.
But I'm born in the year of the sheep.
You are, but you have to make your own decision in your own value and know how your self worth is. That is the most important thing.
Yeah. I think it's definitely good to have self value, but also be humble about it, because if you're humble about it, allowing yourself to still learn from people who give you good feedback and allow yourself to keep growing and moving, but at the same time, still hold that value. So believe in yourself. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that constructive criticism, that feedback is it's very important to take note of because that can help you build yourself as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
And Lao Zhu actually said, because one is content with oneself, one doesn't need others' approval, which I think that's exactly what we're saying. If you're content and you're happy with where you are and who you are as a person and the things that you have or what you're working towards, then you don't need approval from others. So the approvals of like comments or likes or follows or whatever from other people, all that doesn't matter or shouldn't matter.
Yeah, and an example of 老子
Why do you keep saying 老子? It's
I
老
have to.
猪.
I have to do it the
Yeah, oh yeah, oh
yeah, the
ah
Western
ah,
way.
ee, ooh ah ah, ching chang, walla walla bing bang.
Yeah, the example of that is very much like if you make a decision, if you're happy and you're true to yourself in terms of this decision is what truly made you happy, you don't need external validation of others.
And so I think another point of why it's important to see self value is because it allows you to be happier. Because, one, obviously, what you said, the alignment, like your life is more in line with you, but also because when you see self value or value in yourself, you're actually truly allowing yourself to be happy rather than just doing what you think you're worth and then living below your means, I guess, is that the term that people say, when actually you can actually reach for more or have more or allow yourself to enjoy more. So when you reach that, you can feel happier. And I think an example for that is really, I can always come back to career. Like if you don't allow yourself to push yourself out there to get that higher salary, not because you just want money for the sake of money, but it aligns with you because then it actually pays for your bills and allows you to have enough disposable income so you can have savings and go for a holiday or something like that. But if you don't go for that and you don't see your self worth, and you have less of that to enjoy, and then you might be living paycheck to paycheck and you're not actually happy because you're just feeling like you're just running on that hamster wheel constantly. So that's why I think self-value goes bigger than just money or just likes or comments or what people say about you. A quick interruption. We want to thank all of yous who have been supporting us, and if you haven't already, please like, comment and subscribe on our YouTube.
If you found any of our episodes helpful, please share to your friends and family as it would help us grow.
Now back to the episode. So while we're on that, so why is it hard sometimes to see value in ourselves?
For me in particular, like I said, my previous role, being in the space for so long, going into this new journey, this new fork and pivot in my life, it was very much, I'm coming into this situation knowing, okay, this is my skill set. This is what I've been doing. To come into a space that is quite different in being told, I think the difficult part is just someone being there superior, telling you, hey, look, you're not doing this for whatever reason it is, whether it's your lack of skill set, a lack of knowledge, and it does have an impact to you. So at times you get clouded by others' feedback.
Yeah, but why do you think it's so hard to find that value in yourself when someone else is telling you something else?
Like for me, I feel like you're so present in that moment of what they're saying that you don't truly realize your true core, and you get clouded by trying to either fit in or trying to work it.
But do you think it's because it's a superior, so you intentionally moved into that conversation thinking that they'll give you guidance, but they're telling you something else, like talking down on you or saying that you're not worthy? So that, because of their position, that kind of pushed back your own self value?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, especially with Korea specifically, it's one of those situations where subconsciously this person is your superior, as you mentioned. So your expectations are is very much this person has the experience, has the knowledge, and is going to guide you and mentor you.
Mm.
But to have them say all these things that is negative or affects you emotionally, it's just so hard to pull yourself out from that moment.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's hard to see. Sometimes it's hard to see the self value. It's because genuinely it's just a really old habit of mine. So if you've heard some of our previous episodes, sometimes I do battle this thing of just not really seeing, like, not thinking that I deserve a certain thing. And it really is an old habit. I've moved out of it for the most part, but there are just small bits sometimes where I just find myself or catch myself in this old mindset, and it is forever a work in progress for me, I think. And how this stemmed into my mindset, I really think it's from Asian upbringing and the typical you need the A plus sort of theory. And no matter how hard you do, you're never good enough, essentially. Not saying that this is what I had to go through, but it really was like you can always do better. And even if you've reached that A, like you need that A plus. And that's the mentality. I don't see my own value until I throw myself in the deep end and I have to work hard. Then I get the results. And then I'm like, okay, I've made it. Or okay, I've succeeded in this project or whatever I'm trying to achieve. And again, in a sense, that is external validation because I'm thrown in the deep end or someone's telling me that I'm not good enough. So I need to prove myself now. And then once I've proved myself, then someone's like, yeah, good job. So I think I always have this cycle where I feel like I need to throw myself in the deep end to work harder or be better and push and strive for higher. In some sense, it's good because then I'm always constantly pushing myself to try as hard as I can. But the mentality of having to be in that position of I'm not good enough or my what I'm doing is shit, then that's also not a good mentality because then you're always battling between like the deep end and then proving yourself by swimming yourself up to the top sort of mentality.
Yeah, I relate to that as well. And I wouldn't say I oftenly go through this, but there are moments where it's one of those mind fucks where you're at this pedestal in your career, and for some reason something just stimulates or puts into your head that your value is not there. So it's exactly what you're doing. What you mentioned is,
You mean like you're telling yourself you're not good enough?
yeah, like somehow your brain just switches into this mode of, oh shit, I'm not doing good enough. So you're trying to prove a point to yourself, essentially.
Overachievers.
And then you've got other people, like your colleagues or whatever it is, who are like, hey man, you're doing fucking good, or dude, you're doing a great job, or things like that. And you're like, well, hang on, no, I'm not.
Yeah, and it's hard to receive those compliments too.
Yeah, definitely struggled to accept those kind of compliments.
Yeah, I struggle with that too, and I still struggle with it. If someone tells me I've done a good job, I find it really awkward. Like, I don't even know, like, even to simply say thank you sometimes is really awkward. And yeah, I don't know why. I think it's just, to me, I bring it back to upbringing where you always need to do better. And no matter how high you've already achieved, you need to do even better than that. And I think that's just become a mindset, things that I've applied to all sorts of life. And sometimes it's not healthy.
Yeah, definitely is not. I don't think my upbringing or the Asian upbringing had much of an effect on it now. More like as in, I don't get awkward when I say thank you. I just go, yeah, thanks. But then I kind of disregard it. I just think I don't comprehend what they're actually saying. I just,
Yeah. But it's also, it comes from like that. If you've seen Asians who are paying for the bill, you need to fight for it. And if you don't fight for it, it means you're disrespectful. It's that same concept. It's like if someone compliment you, you first have to push that compliment away, be like, nah, I'm not that good. And then they're like, nah, you're good. And then you're like, okay, thank you. So it's like that kind of push and pull. And I think that's become a mentality that I've had. But sometimes it's just good to actually acknowledge and accept that compliment and be like, thank you. Because what I found sometimes it might actually be disrespectful to the other person because they took the courage to come and say, hey, you've done a good job. But then you're like, nah, it's not good enough. Then it kind of shows like a different side. So there's different aspects and different angles on how you can take this. But I've also realized sometimes it can come across as rude if you don't say thank you.
that's actually an interesting perspective. I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah, in my head, it's like to do that is another point where I was gonna say like the humbling part. Because when you're first like, oh nah, like yeah, like I appreciate you saying this, but I don't feel like I'm good enough. Like I genuinely think that, but at the same time, it's when my initial thought was if you say thank you first, then you truly believe that yeah, you're good. And then because you truly think that yeah, you're good, you're arrogant or you're too overly confident. And I didn't want to seem like that.
I definitely feel that that was me earlier days. And I know you mentioned that I'm a person that carries myself quite well when it comes to self value. So when I actually think about it, my old self definitely did struggle with those things. But to add on to this, I recall that I did have some struggles with friendships when it came to value.
Mm,
And it was more on a perspective of I didn't think that I didn't have the value to be around these certain people.
like you weren't good enough for
I
them.
wasn't either good enough, I wasn't, like, cool enough, or I just didn't have the right attributes to be in the right or to be within the same friendship groups as certain people. And I don't know whether it was a subconscious thing that I thought about it. Maybe it was a thing that I just didn't have maybe the confidence, I didn't have the self belief or something like that. But I really did think about that younger, and that probably explains why I jumped around with friend group quite oftenly. Well, I had a massive group of friends because I always jumped around different people. And
But how did you measure yourself by like how many friends you had or like how many friends they had when you said that you think that you're not as cool as your other friends?
I don't think the measuring of how many friends came to play. It was more on,
Was your joke funny?
yeah, like, am I cool to hang out with and just talk with? I guess that was my train of thought at the time.
Mm,
And that always used to play on my mind, this friend, or can I be this guy's friend? Or
mm.
can I even am I worthy enough to be?
Yeah, I have those thoughts. I had it more back then as to now. Sometimes it does happen, but I had similar thoughts where I didn't think I was worthy of like a friendship or someone or a group because I find that when I first meet someone, like I know that I'm pretty cool to hang out with. I'm like fun, whatever. But I feel like once they've met me once and then you lead into like say hang out a second time or hang out with me alone, I'm kind of boring. So like this is just my own personal thought. No one has actually said that to me, but I kind of get that sense, and I've always had that thought, which I think has diminished my self value because then I'm overthinking certain things like what should I say? Should I say something? Should I make a joke? But then if I make a joke, what if it's not funny? And there's like all these kind of thoughts. And then if you really truly believed in yourself and like just be who you are without overthinking all these things, it really has made such a difference when I think like that rather than thinking, what should I say? What do I do? How should I wear my clothes? What should I pick? And things like that. It really does affect the friendship as well.
It definitely does. When I actually reflect back, I believe my self value was all over the place when it came to relationships too. Girlfriends, like being with girls and shit like that. And
How?
I don't know, I just like, for me, not to sound a bit cocky here, but I would get girls or date girls, but then I would struggle to feel and think that, oh, am I worthy to be a boyfriend material for these girls?
I just thought of that. It's like a reel or a video. It's like, hey, come here and feel this shirt. Do you know what material this is? It's boyfriend material.
What the fuck? How the hell did you think of
I
that?
don't know. You said material. I
Oh,
just thought of
well,
it.
anyway, I used to think of that early in my stages of dating, and I don't know why. I think I was just I don't think I was a confident person back then.
So do you think self value is highly linked with confidence?
I personally feel like yes, but no.
And so you're gonna explain or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I feel that, yeah, your confidence in yourself has an effect to what you truly value and what aligns to you. Because if you're confident in things or aspects, then you're going to lean towards those, right?
Mm,
The other half of that is no, because self value to me is more on, well, what are the values that you truly feel as a whole, as a person, as opposed to your confidence?
yeah.
Because your confidence should naturally come with the values that you follow, that you align with.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think also confidence, it's not the same, but it has an effect to your value because it allows you to have the confidence to go for something new or something higher and challenge yourself to go for something bigger. So I think confidence has a play in that sort of sense.
Yeah, and confidence also has a impact to your self worth too.
Mm. But in other sense, going back into why sometimes we struggle with seeing self value, there are some studies that actually say that people struggle with self value because they think if they say get complimented, they get too satisfied with themselves, and then they won't be motivated to continue to grow or change. And in a way, I think that actually is me as well, and that's why I don't like it's a hard balance. Again, a very conflicting person. Sometimes I do need the compliments, and that's more like my indicators like am I doing it right? Am I going to the right direction? But then also sometimes when I get praise, say I get praised too much or get praised out of nowhere or it's like too what's it called? Too enthusiastic, it's not that I get ahead of myself, but then I'm like, all right, I've done my job, and then I'm kind of like, okay, I'll just take the back seat now. And it's not that I get lazy, depending on what it is, but I'm just like, okay, I've done my thing. But then it really stops me from moving forward, I guess, in a way. So sometimes that's why sometimes it's hard to see value in myself in that way. And then that's why I also lean into throwing myself into the deep end and then prefer people don't tell me too many compliments yet until I've actually like done like hit the next milestone or something.
And is that just something to revalidate yourself? Hey, really?
I think it's like small little checkpoints are okay. Where like, hey, I've noticed that you've been working hard. Like, keep going. Like, things are that's okay. But when people like, you're doing a great job. Like, you're doing so good. Like, wow, look at this and all that kind of very enthusiastic compliments. It really does make me think like, okay, I've done it. Like, I don't need to do any more. Whereas, like, if someone's like, yeah, you're doing great, keep going, like, what you're doing is heading to the right direction, that is more like a good checkpoint where I'm like, okay, I can, like, I'm doing what I need to do. I just need to keep going.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't know why though. Like, I've just noticed that it does change my mindset depending on how people compliment me.
It makes sense that you do that. And from my perspective, the reason why I won't say I don't accept compliments or validations from externals, but it's more in the fact that I don't realistically accept it because I'm trying to keep myself realistic.
What do you mean?
And I've noticed this when people get told that they're doing so well so oftenly, it gets a bit ahead of them, like they get a bit ahead of themselves. They might get a little arrogant because they're thinking, okay, I'm doing so well, I'm being so successful.
It's kind of like, the hare and the tortoise race, that story? How the hare, which is the rabbit, he was running and he's like, he knows he's like well ahead of the tortoise. So he decides to sit on the side on the haystack and takes a nap because he knows he's done a good job. And because he took a nap, he slept for so long that the tortoise actually overtook him and made it to the finish line. So it's kind of like that concept where you're like, oh,
Mm.
like I've done good enough. I'm well ahead. I can now chill. But because you chilled for too long, now you're falling behind.
Yeah, that's like the cycling races that you see on TikTok and shit, where there's this one race where this guy was full celebrating before he got to the line, and there was someone behind him who full fucking zoomed and passed him. And as that guy who caught up and passed the line, the guy who was celebrating early was like, "Oh fuck," and he didn't realize that this dude full shot past him. So it's a similar but not the same, but similar concept in the fact that me, from my perspective, those external validations or just that compliments that I get, I use that more on a perspective of trying to keep myself more humble.
Yeah, and that's what I do as well. And it's more, yeah, like I said, it's like the fear of getting too satisfied and you just don't want to click over into that mindset where you're like, yeah, I've done a good job. And it's not that I don't want to accept it. It's just that I don't want to go into that mind frame where like, okay, I can cruise now. But another one is also what we've touched on is being afraid that they are looking too arrogant, which is, from the sounds of it, it's what we both have is just sounding, if we actually accept that we're doing a good job or accepting our self value is sounding arrogant because sometimes you will need to voice what you think your worth is. And because you do that, it might be different to what other people are thinking as well. And then it may come across as arrogant. But for the most part, I don't think that is the case, but it's just that naturally this is what all of us as human beings do think.
I feel that it's just a fine line of how you portray yourself or how you speak your words of whatever you're trying to express.
Yeah, and that's why at the start when we were defining what we think self-value is seeing value in ourselves without comparing it to other people. And I think that comparison part comes into a big play on how you portray yourself. Either are you arrogant or are you not? And that really, yeah, is the big part.
Yeah, and that's an important perspective that you just mentioned too, because that leads to the perspective of people constantly having to measure themselves to others in terms of their results. And how that relates to self-value is you're not holding yourself true to your own individual values. You're more so relating that to others and how they perform.
Well, how I see this point is that it's fine to compare yourself with others as benchmarks. So you're like, am I like doing good enough here? Have I hit some of the stuff where other people have hit? But Where it becomes like a struggle to see your self value is when you lean too much into comparison. So maybe in a social media sense, and you're a content creator, you have 10K followers, someone else which is in your inspiration list, they have 25K followers and they get like 50 likes on each post, whereas you only get 5,000 likes. Using that as a benchmark to be like, yeah, I can keep moving, I can keep doing better, that's fine. But when you do that, when you're telling yourself that you're not as good as another person, or when you're not good enough, or you don't get 5,000 likes, that's when it becomes like a struggle to see self value, because now you've turned your mindset into like, I need to be like this person, I need to be like someone else. And it's like a comparison thing rather than a measurement.
Yeah, a lot of this has actually touched on seeking external validations. Relating to that, do you believe that there is really a positive or a negative effect to this?
So I think we did explain some of this, and I don't think it's a good or a bad. There is definitely definitely points to each side. So similar to what I said before, is like when you use something as a measurement to seeing if like a guiding line, like is it, are you on the right track? Are you in the right direction? That's fine when you seek external validation. But when you use it as a comparison and you're like, I'm not like that person, or I'm not there, or I'm not worthy because I don't have this much, that's when it becomes bad. But also, I think seeking external validation is also fine, especially when you're in your earlier stages of something. So, say you're in your early stages of a career or you're trying out something new, it's fine to seek external validation because they are your support network and they are your mentors or friends or people who can be like, hey, you're doing a good job. Like what I was saying, like just little golden nuggets that are like, hey, you're on the right track. Like that's fine. But if you're constantly doing that, say you're now mid tier of whatever you're doing and you're still trying to seek external validation, and that's the only thing that's guiding you to feel good or guiding you to be like, yeah, I've made it, then that's when it becomes bad.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But some other examples in terms of the bad, you actually did mention this before, and that was really making that comparison to social media and seeking that validation through comments and that does really flood and cloud your judgment in terms of direction or the guidance of where you should be going.
Yeah. Like I think all of these points that we share is just like it's sometimes good to have, and it's more like take it with a grain of salt, because it's like when you have constructive criticism, it's the same thing. Like you take away what you need to take away and the rest is just additional points. But while we're on seeking external validation, why do you think we as humans tend to seek external validation?
Seeking external validation is just a natural tool or a natural perspective that we take on to confirm, like you said, either it's am I on the right fork? Am I on the right journey? Some way that is guiding you along that journey. It's really just making, I wouldn't say a comparison, but really just seeing what others are doing. But I can see where it does have an effect where it clouds your vision of your direction, because you get so ingrained in seeing others being successful in whatever that journey is, and you're like, hang on, I see this person now, I need to be like this person.
I think it's also relatability. I think we seek external validation because we as humans, we want to be relatable or we want to be liked by others. And because of that, sometimes we tend to lean towards seeking external validation. And that comes in many different forms, which we've already touched on. And it really is just to fit in. But I don't think you always need to fit in. As long as you do, again, knowing your self worth, your self value, you do the things that you love to do. You don't always need to be like other people. And maybe you doing you, other people will want to, not saying they want to be like you, but they also understand where you're coming from and enjoy the things that you do. And then now they can relate to you or you can relate to each other.
Yeah, and I like to think of it like on a perspective that, yeah, you might be in the same industry, you might be doing the same thing, you might be trying to achieve a similar or the same identical thing, but everyone's individual journey or individual fork that they take and experience is their own experience.
Another one that I read is it's because like we seek external validation is because we have unmet past emotional needs. Because I think it is quite true. Like, say, if you go think back about how you were as a kid when you were younger, maybe your parents were always busy, they weren't around, they weren't there to celebrate your small wins, they weren't there to, I don't know, see you ride your bike for the first time, whatever it is. And now you're just seeking that sort of validation from other people, whether it's from your job or your friend or, social media, things like that. And you're just trying to seek that validation from somewhere else because of past moments that wasn't satisfied. For me, it was like I really didn't get that validation from my parents where like, yeah, you've done a good job. And it really is that like A plus concept. It's like you go home with a B and it's like, how come you didn't get the A? Or you could have done better or like do better next time. And that is more like the unmet past emotional need that I didn't get. So
Right.
that's why it's conformed into now where I'm like, I am always telling myself that I'm not good enough and that I need to work harder. And then that's why I think when someone like a workplace that tells me that I'm not good enough, that one comment that said I'm not good enough does actually hit me hard as opposed to the five or six other people who have told me that I've done.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've achieved well
Yeah.
type of situation. Yeah. Yeah. Now that you've mentioned all those things and it's provided some clarity, how do we see our own values when it comes to this perspective?
For me, I learned to not always listen to my inner critic because your inner critic can be harsh sometimes, especially when you're telling yourself that you can do more and you're not doing good enough. And it's reframing that and being like, you've done what you can today, you've done good here, or really be realistic and be like, yeah, you may not have reached this goal that you intended to, but you've gotten this far. So listen to your inner critic, but also take it with a grain of salt, just like with any other feedback.
For me, it's how do you hold yourself true and happy when it comes to your true value? So, as an example, in my earlier days, I really did struggle with my career growth and just trying to find myself in terms of who I was, how I worked as an individual as
Aside from knowing yourself and what you value, but also being okay with rolling with that, because if you're not okay, but you know your own self value, but you don't actually roll with that, then you're still not being true to yourself. But if you're okay with it and really just being you, then that's how you see more value in yourself.
yeah, and that value also leads to that self-worth as well. It is important that you align those things together.
And then what we said before, which is receive compliments. Sometimes it is hard, but just actually receiving it outside of just saying thank you, but actually really let that simmer within you and actually realizing that someone is acknowledging you for your work rather than just saying thank you, brushing it off, moving on, and then go on with your day, but actually be like, oh wow, this person actually did notice the work that I'm doing or did notice that I did think of them. So it's these sort of things and actually thinking about it and accepting the compliments.
Yeah, that's something that I at times do struggle with as well.
I still struggle with it.
And using compliments really does project you in the right direction in terms of, well, how can you improve yourself, staying true to yourself, but also acknowledging that, you are working your ass off, you are doing well.
Yeah, and the last one I would want to share to help you see better self value is don't settle for less or don't feel you always have to settle for less because that really puts a limiter in your self value and you won't ever be able to grow out of that bubble. So if you are okay to push your limits or actually see your self worth and actually go for that value that you see in yourself, it opens up to a whole new window and opportunities and all these other things that actually lead into allowing you to be happy and enjoy the things that you want for yourself.
That's a big one. Don't settle for less. And this is something that I took ages to figure out. Because, yeah, if you're settling for less, that's just not you really appreciating what you hold true to yourself. And it's also being realistic too, knowing what you want out of your own expectations as well, but also challenging yourself to the next point or next chapter in whatever journey that you're taking on.
Final question. What would you find the courage to do if you had better self-value, or even now if you think that you have good self-value, what would you find the courage to go and do if nothing was holding you back?
What I would do to find the courage to change a career, and this perspective is I've always wanted to give it a crack in being an optometrist, something in health. I never came to a point where I thought my self value would be in that space of helping people, being in medicine, being able to have the ability to study and put solid years in really retraining myself. I find that my self value within that space is quite low. My confidence in that area would be
Like,
quite
you
low.
think that you don't have enough knowledge, or like what's the self-worth that you don't think you have?
I think it's the combination of that knowledge and the ability to step into a medical space. I just don't think I have the ability to do so. But everyone says, mate, you have the ability to do anything if you put your mind to it,
Which is true.
which
I
is true.
believe that. Yeah. Mine is, as much as it sounds very superficial, if that's the name, I actually really want to try content creation because I think I just do a lot of stupid shit and I just like to make people laugh. So I think that'd be awesome if I could actually get into the content creation space. But what's holding me back is like, one, it's like a saturated space. So me trying to compete with all those kind of people can't be bothered. But at the same time, it's like going back into a bit of that self confidence thing is like, who is gonna watch me anyway? Like, I'm not gonna I'm not nothing special, and that's what's holding me back. But if it wasn't holding me back, I would love to try content creation, and what that might look like, I don't know, but I think it'll be cool to explore.
So do you think it's just your confidence and the understanding that you're not cool is what's
Mm,
holding you back?
yeah, pretty much.
And I feel like a lot of people that are in content creation have that same feeling. Because I've watched a lot of people who say, yeah, when I first started, this is what I felt.
Mm.
And miraculously they're massive.
Yeah. And I'm not doing it because I want to be famous or like anything special. I just really want to explore that space just to see what it's like. And it's always been a curiosity of mine to try and just be a content creator, share a bit of my life, share a bit of my humor. But yeah, I don't know, like just stuff holds me back.
Damn. Well, self value, self worth. Let us know in the comments. If we have missed anything, let us know in the DMs.
Yeah. And I'll end it with a quote. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So,
Boom.
yeah, I found it a really good quote because if you don't consent to it, like something that you don't accept or you believe in, then it shouldn't matter to you what other people's thoughts are. So, yeah, let that sink in and we'll see you back for the next one.
We'll see you in the next one.
Goodbye.
Peace.